Okay, so in session 3, we will be discussing supply chain performance management, where we left last time, and why it is important because we talk about designing of supply chain management or the supply chain network. In our last session, we talks about various aspects of network designing, all the way, the way the cost impacts over there, the kind of warehouses, the way we have to set up warehouses, and the challenges to it. But at the end of the day, there is always a trade-off, like how much money you need to invest to optimize your supply chain, and at the same time what is the gain you are going to get out of that investment. So somewhere you have to manage the performance of your supply chain, that how good it is. Now, as already said in previous sessions, there is nothing which says that once designed it will always work. There is always a scope of improvement in your supply chain, because this is just a chain altogether. So as you know, as you move forward, um, your constraints will keep moving. Like you start working on one topic that becomes sturdy, then you will find that now the other topic has, or the other warehouse or other constraint has come up, so you start working on them. So this is something which will continuously happening. You have a continuous improvement in your supply chain, and that's where performance management is very critical in supply chain aspect. Now, um, going to the slide deck. So what is performance and management? So the process of quantifying the efficiency and the effectiveness of past action. So understand these two dictionary terms, efficiency and effectiveness. So efficiency is basically saying that, I am making a certain amount of input. What is the amount of output I am going to get? That is pure efficiency, right? So if I am putting a liter of an oil, that how much power I am going to generate, that is typical efficiency. The effectiveness is that actually is it adding any value to my day-to-day life, right? So if I am having a liter of oil going into an engine, what are the output I am going to get? It is actually effective for my work to do, right? It may be a very effective machine, very efficient machine, but may not be a useful device for me altogether. So the process where you are able to quantify the efficiency as well as the effectiveness, that becomes a performance management. So again, we will talk about that everything from here needs to be driven not by the sake of argument, but on data points. Understand supply chain is a form of mathematical modeling and simulations to it. So you always have parameters and you need to quantify those things. So efficiency, it measures how successfully the inputs has been transformed into outputs. That is typical efficiencies, right? So with a liter of an oil, what is the horsepower I'm going to generate? 100, 200, 300. So that is my efficiency. Effectiveness, that how successfully the system achieved the desired outputs. So that is very important. So I am getting 100 horsepower, I am getting 1000 horsepower, doesn't matter. The thing is that if I need 200 horsepower, whether I am able to achieve that 200 or not. So maybe, with 1000 horsepower, that machine is still not useful, not effective to me, or even with the 199 horsepower, that is not effective to me because I need 200 horsepower. So efficiency and effectiveness are two very distinct terms. Do not use them interchangeably in your discussions, in your modeling, or in your thought process. Why a supply chain performance management is required? Anything that can be measured can be improved and controlled, right? So something which you cannot measure, you simply cannot improve it. For example, your exams, right? So if you have a grading, then only you know that, okay, I have graded at a scale of 10, where I have to go now. To know about the benefit relies from SCM implementation. So again, we talk about a lot of things which happens in SCM, information technology, data matching, warehouse setup, network modeling, resource management. So all those things needs uh, have a cost to it. So at the end of the day, when business is putting so much of money into supply chain, they also need to understand what is my return of investment, how much money I am able to get by investing a certain amount of money, right? So always business says, okay, I will invest 100 rupees, I want more than 100 rupees out of it. That's how the business will run. Otherwise you will start making losses. Absence of a uniformly acceptable PMS for supply chain. So the bigger question is that there is no standard uniform performance management system for supply chain. That is a very big glitch in the supply chain. Okay, somebody was quite noisy. Okay. So absence of uniformly acceptable PMS, which means performance management system for supply chain. So there is, like, for example, you have this percentile in your exams, you will have percentages, you will have grading system. For supply chain, as of now, there is no defined way. So every supply chain for every organization has a different way of measuring the performance. And again, it has a lot of impact based on what kind of product you are dealing with, what kind of market you are dealing with, what kind of customer segment you are dealing with. So all those things keep changing your PMS system. Financial measures such as turnover, EPS, right? So again, that's very difficult thing. I hope you have done your course in the financial. So people will talk about return of investment, right? Somebody will talk about the turnover. Somebody will talk about the cash flows or the revenue side of it or the break-even point. So all those are different financial jargons which are used heavily in the business, and based on that, your definition or your measuring of supply chain or the efficiency and the effectiveness of supply chain management keeps changing. So that's another issue. There is no defined way saying that, okay, every business will work on ROI or everybody will work on cash flows. Every business has its own way of understanding their balance sheets and determining their profits or projecting their profits, I will say. Identify the weaker links in supply chain so as to effectively utilize the resources. So it's a chain. So every time you work on a part of a chain that becomes stronger, some other will become weaker. That's a continuous process, and every time you have to keep fine tuning it. So identifying is another thing. So there is no thumb rule saying that this is your supply chain may be doing great, but then the zeal is that to have it greater or even better than what it is doing today. So finding those areas is a reason where you need to have performance management. And then periodic evaluation of supply chain performance serve as a guidelines in strategy making. So all the companies which deals with logistics, right? And today most of the companies are touching logistics one way or the other. Somewhere you need to understand that how your supply chain is working to formalize your strategy. In session one, we talk about the Toyota side of it, right? We talk about the JIT, we talk about the Kanban, and all those things are actually strategic things for these big companies, and they all are driven out of how their supply chain is working. Even today, when we talk about a lot of courier companies, we talk about transportation companies, their strategy is largely dependent on how their supply chain is working, on how effective, how efficient their supply chain is. And definitely performance measurement always has a motivational effect, right? So if you are able to grade a system, you always get motivated to do better than before. So that's another philosophical reason of having a performance measurement over here. Now, one of the need is increasing customer distributor complaints followed by other order cancellations. So, if you have a lot of customer complaints popping in, and you are facing a lot of customer cancellations, you need to see what's wrong happening in the supply chain. For example, there was a time with Snapdeal, right, where you all can relate. A lot of wrong products start shipping, and today Snapdeal share is not growing the way Amazon or Flipkart has gone. Very simple reason: they fail at the supply chain perspective altogether. If you talk about companies like FedEx, which come as with try to have a joint venture as Pafex in India with Prakash Couriers, that fails terribly because again the supply chain expectations has not been met clearly. Increasing levels of stock holding, so that's another thing. The cost of inventory, a very key, crucial, important topic in supply chain. So more the stock, right, more the cost, and more the cost, not a good thing for the business altogether, given the fact that today things are changing at a very rapid pace. Increasing levels of back orders, right? So when we say back orders, if you are not able to fulfill your orders on time, or if you are having a pile of orders, your production is not been met, right? Not only because of the plant capacity, but also the procurement of materials are not happening on time, you will have a issue with the orders fulfillment. Periodic access and shortage of storage space, right? So again, we talk about the efficient use of warehouse. So that's another issue. Now, let me give you an example. Most of the airlines are not able to make money, right? And there was a very famous quote from Richard Branson, who is the owner of Virgin Airways, saying that the fastest way to become a millionaire from a billionaire is to open an airlines, and we know a lot of examples exist even in India also for that. Now, why we are saying from that perspective, why that reason, right? Because every time a aircraft lands, waits, cleaned and refueled and go up in the air, there is a cost to it. The best operating model for airlines, or for that sake, for any transport, is that they never stop. They are always 100% loaded, and they are always moving on their path. That's where you get the maximum profit. So similarly for the storage space also, right? If you have, a go down which is having only 100 pallets of space, and if you are having 110, 10 pallets are destroyed. At the same time, if you start filling your storage space with only 90 pallets, you always have this capacity of 10 which is underutilized, so you are still paying for 10 storage of 10 pallets without using it. So that's where it's very important to design your warehouses accordingly and manage the supply chain. And increasing level of stock obsolescence, right? So we talk about products, right? The innovative product where things comes in a tick, and all of a sudden everybody wants them, and 15-20 days the craze goes out and nobody wants to buy them again. So that's also very important to understand your supply chain, because that's where your benefits, your profits lies. So for all these reasons, right, we always need to evaluate our supply chain based on our product, based on our warehouses, so what kind of product we are selling or buying, what kind of customer segment we have. So all those things are pretty much required over here. Now, so when we say that we do not have a formal performance management in place, let me give you a background to it. There is no standard, unified, uniform way across the globe which is acceptable by the supply chain guru, saying that this is how I am going to evaluate the supply chain. So there are multiple models, many models are available, right? And till 1990s, that's a time when supply chain is not coming up a big way. It is more towards the logistics side of it, right? Where consolidation of different things are happening into logistic domain. It's always financials, right? So very simple calculation. I am spending 100. Am I able to save 150 out of it? If not, then this is not a viable thing, because the horizon is vision and horizon is very limited, and nobody is talking about long term. Nobody is talking about the value stream, which is a major component in supply chain management. And then in 1992, there is a very famous balance scorecard approach has come. If you look into the google.com balance scorecard, you will find tons and tons of data, all correct. And that's where they formulated this balance scorecard, which actually start uh, taking performance management into a very different stream altogether. uh, but again, balance scorecard is typically logistics or the other side of it. It does not talk about the supply chain. So performance management is there, but not for the supply chain. So yes, balance scorecard is a standardized thing used across industry, but again, not for supply chain. So what we need from a performance management system, right? So it needs to be transparent, right? So take your example of your exams, right? So you want that your there need to be transparency in terms of evaluation, right? It needs to be simple, right? So the best simple thing is, okay, fine, I have a that's why people say that maths always give you either 100 0, or it will give you 100 over there, because it's simple, right? You do certain steps, you will arrive to a straight result near theory, and you get the straight over there. self-regulating, right? So you don't have to really start evaluating everything. It should be self-regulating. So based on certain parameters, you always get some data out of it. Needs to be objective. Now that's very important. And I will suggest to all of you, when you move into the industry, or if you, even you still you are working with the industry, be very objective, right? So sometimes when we talk about problems, sometimes we talk about solutions, we talk in a very subjective manner, which infuse lot of things which are very philosophical in nature. They are neither they are a problem nor they are a solution altogether. They are just statements which does not take you anywhere. So you need to be very objective in your discussions, and that's where your performance management also comes in. That it has to be very objective, that what exactly I want to achieve, right? So I want to achieve a 5% efficiency in my road transport. So very objective. So it says where, when, how much, right? And if you can say I want to achieve 5% of efficiency in my road transport in next 2 years, then it is a very objective statement. Then you know what, where, when, and how to look into the problem. Motivating and stimulating to all stakeholder, that's very important, right? So understand, when you are working in a group, you are not the only person. There will be people around you, there will be people on top of you, and there will be a hierarchy which is sitting right beneath you. These all are stakeholders, right? They have their own interest altogether. Stakeholder management is a big topic, but they have their own interest, they have their own thought. So you need to understand that your performance management have something for everyone. So it should be motivating, right? And the top management start thinking from the financial perspective, the junior management start thinking about their work-life balance. You should be able to start thinking about visibility and how to manage it better. And it needs to be realistic, right? So sometimes you can actually put a very high benchmark, saying, okay, I want to have a 50% improvement in my operational cost. It will not happen. So let's not talk about 50%, 80% until unless it is very realistic. So take a baby steps to reach to a larger step over there. Sometimes unrealistic goals are also cause of major failures in many organizations. Again, performance management system should have multiple criteria. These are the typical characteristics. So they need to have multiple criteria. Primary purpose should not be reward or to punish. That's very important. So the moment your performance management is a threat, nobody will cooperate to it. So your performance management system should never point out to people. Your performance management system should always point out the problem and the solution to it. Never use performance management system to point out a problem to a person. That is a threat which deteriorates people, the demotivating factor for people to contribute correctly in your performance management system. Performance to schedule measures must use group, not individual. That's very important. So do not bank on individual things, right? We have a tendency where we take just 2 or 3 instances and generalize everything. Don't do this. Take a group, right? Take a sample of things, right? So let's say you are into a road transport, and let's say you have a problem on a typical, so do not take a data of 2 or 3 or 4 trucks. Take a group of trucks, all judge on the same parameters to arrive to a proper issue or resolution to it. The specific goals must be established and reviewed. So again, as I said, that you need to have a goal at what I want to achieve, get it reviewed by other stakeholders to understand that whether it is realistic or not, how good it is, can we improve it further, right? Or it is actually a goal, or it is we are talking about something which is not even required for the business, right? Performance management must be understood by those whose performance is being measured. Very important thing. So if for your exams, if somebody is trying to take an exams and you are trying to put an answer, both the parties should need to understand that how this has been evaluated, right? What are the benchmark of this evaluation? If not, then you may write some answer which your examiner do not agree to, but there need to be something very clear. So if I generally say I give you an essay of like write 1,000 words for supply chain management. Everybody will put 1,000 words over there, and then the question is that it is very subjective. At the same time, if we talk about write 1,000 words for performance management system in supply chain, more by and large the content will be similar. So understand that how this has been judged. PM data must be available for review. Very important thing. Do not take guarantee that the data what you are seeing is always correct, or do not hide data. If you have the data with you, always take with a pinch of salt, saying that yes, this data may be wrong. Get it reviewed. Get it reviewed from multiple people, from multiple sources, to ensure that this data is all correct. Very important thing. We talk about balanced scorecard approach quickly. It seeks to integrate different types of performance measures such as financials, non-financials, internal and external, and it provides a medium to translate the vision into a clear set of objectives. A very strong performance management tool, and objectives are translated into a system of performance measures that effectively communicate a powerful forward-looking strategic focus on the entire organization. Now, these things looks to be very simple. It's very difficult to actually start building a balanced scorecard approach. If you look into the Google, there will be some examples over there, but for all practicality, it's not that easy. I have done this exercise for one of my organizations. It is not an easy thing to do for all the challenges we have seen in our previous sessions and slides. So in general, these are the four parameters for the balanced scorecard approach. We say financials are like 22%. We talk about it, 20% of the performance based on the financials. 20% have been to customers. 34% is internal business, and 22% is learning and growth. So these are the typical four perspective on which the balanced scorecard approach works. If we talk about the financial perspective, that what constitutes this 22%? Cost per unit of product. That's the financial. Net profit per unit of sales, and we have seen this, price fixing issue in all the way back to session one. Turnover, right? Return of investment, economic value added. Now that's a very important thing. Economic value added, right? So economically, what I am valuating. So if let's say I have a raw material of 100 rupees, I did a process to it, then economically how much I have added to it, maybe 20 rupees. I may sell it for 1000 rupees, that doesn't matter. But economically, whether I have enhanced the value by 10 rupees or 20 rupees, that is the important thing. So that based on the the process part of it. Working capital required, very important term from the financial perspective, right? So if you don't have a capital to work with, cannot run your business. Logistic cost. Now this cost is huge in India. So what is the cost of logistics we are talking about over here? And revenue earned per employee. So let's say I have 100 people, right? And if 100 people are working to generate a 1 lakh rupee, then what is the revenue per employee, right? So per employee is like 1 lakh divided by 100. So that's where I will get that my per employees, that's my revenue. I think a couple of months back there was a big noise coming from the Infosys saying that the revenue per employee has decreased a lot, and then Mr. Vishal Sikka, the ex-CEO of the Infosys, did try to increase that revenue per employee by upscaling the team, right, by going into a new technology, by revising the rate. So that is also very important. So at the end of the day, if you are not having a healthy revenue per employee, you start talking about layoff. So always ensure that your revenue per employee is good, so that you remain relevant, your business remains relevant. Customer perspective, right? As a customer, what is my perspective in balance scorecard? On time delivery, right? After sales service, whether the customer base is increasing or not, whether the old customers are coming back or not, how much customization I can provide to a product, right? 2 colors, 3 colors, 8 colors, 20 colors. To what level I can customize my product? What is the quality of product? Now quality is very subjective, right? It's always associated to money, time, and everything. But at the end of the day, the amount of money I am paying, whatever the product I am getting, if I am happy with the quality, I am doing a good quality job. Ease in tracking of customers orders. I need to know, and it's both ways, right? Customer want to know where my order is, and as a seller I want to know where my order is, so that I always have the visibility on my orders. Online receipt of orders, right? Why do you want to have the paperwork? Like just on a click of a mouse, the order is sent to a person who is sitting 1,000 miles away from you, and you are able to get it. So that's the ease of doing business, which is also a part of a supply chain. Order fill rate, right? Percentage of orders that were met when demand were made. That's very important. Typical bullwhip effect, right? If I have a demand, don't have a product, I lose business. If I don't have a demand and I have products, I am wasting, right? Because I have a cost of inventory associated to it. These are a typical customer perspective we are talking about. Internal business perspective from the, now these all perspective, right? So these things needs to be figured out when you are trying to do a balance card approach. Inventory turnover ratio, we discussed this in last sessions. Asset utilization, right? So I give an example, warehouse, right? I have space of 100 pallets, right? So what is my average utilization of the asset? Throughput time, purchase lead time, right? So that is very important to understand the efficiency and effectiveness in my supply chain. Manufacturing lead time, right? How much time I will take to manufacture a product. Operating cost, right? Today I also, supply chain plays on this operating cost. That's where the margin lies in. Reduce waste, right? So wastage is a big deal, right? I can see from a lot of industries where let's say you are into a manufacturing hub, so you need to see that in an iron sheet how many holes you can, how neatly and closely you can punch holes over there, because every time you punch a hole there is a scrap is start generated over there. So you need to have more holes on a sheet rather than space wise and everything over there. From the software perspective, right, any kind of a dead code functionality which you're not using, it's all wastage over there. From the road perspective, if a truck is moving alone, no loading over there or half loaded over there, that's a waste. That's a complete waste for you. Reduction in number of breakdowns, sorry, plant productivity, just in time environment, right? Reduction in number of breakdowns, very important. If you have frequent breakdowns, you are halting your production, the effect is cascading on everything. So you need to understand that the breakdowns needs to be limited. Now there can be trends in breakdown. So if you have a one breakdown and if you're finding that the breakdown has start occur almost every day, then you need to find a pattern to it, that why, when, where, how these things are happening before you actually come for a solution. And I always suggest, if you want to crack a problem, answer all the questions: when, where, how, what, right, who. So all these things will actually help you to narrow down the problem statement. Stabilize master schedule, right? Do not have a very frequent changing production plan. So if I start changing my plan every then and now, I cannot use the effectiveness, and the efficiency of my supply chain will be reduced. For example, if I am having 3 trucks and I have to load them, and at the 11th hour somebody, okay, I will not send you, then somebody else say, okay, I will give you some amount of material. So the 11th hour changes give you a cost to it. Accuracy of documentation, very important, right? So if you are moving across states, across countries, right, even within the cities, if your documentation is not accurate, you have a wrong order number, wrong prices onto it, wrong payment conditions, you can have a major chaos, right, legally as well as customer dissatisfaction. Cash to cash time, that's another concept from the financial perspective, right? So I'm giving a cash, I also need to generate the cash over there. Learning, growth, and innovative perspective, that's another dimension of out of the four, the last dimension. Learn new product development time, right? So if you are into an innovative product business, learn new product development time. Employee turnover, very important thing. Employee skill and training, right? So always skill your employees and skill yourself, right? So what you are studying today, tomorrow, they all become irrelevant in near future. So keep upgrading yourself. Manpower requirements, right? So how many people you need. Improve relations within organization, that's very important, right? So if you have multiple arms in your organization, speak each of them, right? You cannot work in silos, try to build bridges, not silos. Improve relationships outside the organizations, very important, right? Because you have to deal with the outside network at different organizations over there. You need to have a very harmonious workable environment with your outside organizations. Responsiveness, right? Do not sit on information. If somebody is expecting you an answer on the email, do respond to it. Forecasting accuracy, again, we cannot be 100% accurate. It's just a fluke if it happens, but based on the past data, always try to improve your forecasting. Do not take a heuristic of 30 years back. At the same time, do not bank on a heuristic of 1 month. Figure out what works best for your business. Few schedule change in supply chain. So when you are doing a supply chain over there, do not alter the schedules, right? The more you alter, the bigger the problem you have, right? There is a cost to every change over there. Total supply chain inventory control, that's very important, right? So inventory is a big deal in supply chain, and that needs to be managed in all aspects. Supplier sharing and forecasting process. So again, it's the way information flow, and what kind of forecast model different people are using. So if as a consumer you are using a different model, and if the supplier is using a different model, at least you should be aware that his or that organization or the supplier forecasting is based out of which model. It's very important to understand those aspects at least at the higher level. Now, continuing with the balance scorecard approach, whatever the four perspective we have discussed, right? They represent three major stakeholders: the shareholders, right? People who owns the organization one way or the other; the customers, right? To whom the organization is serving, the business is serving; and the employees who are actually working for the organization. So all the four perspective, they are impacting these three people: shareholders, customers, and employees, right? So we need to understand these aspects over here. So from the supply chain perspective, the question is which aspect should be measured, right? Whether it should be customer, right? Whether it should be employees, right? Which perspective? Financial, customer, internal business. So all these four, right? And out of these four, what are the three stakeholders I need to do a um, measurement in my supply chain? Now, how to use these measures to analyze, improve, and control, and how we need to, what needs to be measured, how to analyze and improve and control of it. Right? Now, in your performance management, you need to understand these things. At any given point in time, your performance management of supply chain should be inclusiveness, right? Which means that you try to include every aspect which is impacting your supply chain into your model. Just do not start working only for the employees, only for the stakeholders, only for the customers. It needs to be inclusive of all three, right? So if you are able to maximize your customer value, right, giving a higher value to stakeholder, your shareholders, and have happy employees, you are in the best fit. Which seldom happens, but yes, it do happens. Universality, right? To allow the comparison under several operational conditions, very important, right? Do not think for your own sector, or think from the org perspective. Try to include the external environment as well. Measurability, right? Now, try to only measure what can be measured, right? Do not put subjective things in your performance management. So if you're talking about the employee skills, so you need to understand that whether what is the current skill level and what is the desired skill level, right? And when we say desired, it is something like, must have and good to have. So you need to be having that data with you to understand that where your employee engagement is going on, right? From the customer perspective, what kind of product you are selling, and what is the expectation from the customer, right? In terms of delivery, in terms of value, in terms of other perspective the customer is having. So should be able to measure that. If you cannot measure that, do not include that part into your performance management. And consistency, right? So which means that you need to guarantee consistent measure with the objective of the organization. So at the end of the day, it needs to be consistent to be aligned with the organization over there. If I want to gain something for my supply chain to which my organization is not aligned, doesn't matter. Now, what is the limitation? So I think we discussed that today's supply chain, everybody is talking about their own organization, or just towards at the end of the value we start thinking about something else. So the focus is on a single firm. Integration aspect is making, right. So if I am one organization who is selling something to your organization, then I'm not thinking from your perspective. I'm just thinking from my perspective, right. So the integration of this information between the two orgs is all missing. Nobody is sharing their data. Exhaustive list of measures. So this is just a slide deck. If you go into details, you can have thousands and thousands of parameters on which you can talk about supply chain, but there is no way where you can synthesize these measures all together. It's very difficult. External operating conditions not covered. You never think from the external environment altogether. What are the geographical conditions, the economical or the environmental conditions, the political scenarios, the other organizations' objective, right? So my goal is something different, and my goal may not be aligned with the goal of my supplier. Then all these conditions becomes different. All PMs may not be equally important. Now that's very important. All performance management may not be equally important. It very that from a given perspective in a given situation, what is more important, more weightage goes to which area. And conflicting goals of organization, right? As we already explained, that two organizations, they all have their own priorities and they are not mapping up with each other. And this is the sin. Measurement are often qualitative. It has to be quantitative. No data, no measurement, right? When we say it is good, doesn't matter, right? But when we say he is 6 out of 10, it matters, because then we know we are talking about numbers over there. Good has no meaning. Good is always respective to someone. How to set performance targets, right? Guidance, historically based target, what we have achieved in the past. Based on that, we can set a pace. External benchmark, you always want to be a company of a higher standard, so you try to see what they are doing, and based on that you try to send put your standards over there. Internal benchmark, internally I want to be great, right? Internally I want to increase my operating margins by 5%, logic efficiency by 20%, so my internal benchmarks. And then there's a theoretical targets, right, where somebody say, okay, I want to be a 2 billion company by 2020. That's more theoretical part of it. Theoretical targets. You meet, you're good. You don't meet, we don't know. Because we are talking about a long horizon over there. Problems in performance management. Partners are not interested. They are not motivated to contribute into your performance management parameters. Intangible in nature, right? Good, bad statements. Need of separate department sections, right? So you want to have to work with different departments, you have to work with different sections, or you want to set up a different department. Conflicting goal in and out of the organization, right? So one LOB have a different goal, other for example, if you are into a transport industry, somebody will say the typical way, जुगाड़ से चला लो अभी ये चल सकता है, right? So you just want to have something to be put by the mechanic in your transport vehicle so that it works. But from the operation you will say, no, let's replace it because it is in warranty, and it will give me a better mileage. What if it breakdown happens, right? What if you put a jugaad kind of stuff, and let's say 100 miles down the line, somewhere somewhere in the jungle the breakdown happens, who is going to bear the cost? So we have conflicting goals. Most of the measures are backward looking, right? That's another thing. Like, we always look at the past. Okay, we have done a mistake, how to correct it? The question is that we should talk about the corrective part, but we also talk about the preventive side of it. What is in the future, where I want to be. Some of the selective measures are time taking and difficult to measure. Now that's very important thing. Again, I'm saying that the data is very important, and at times it's very difficult to get this data right on time. Now, we talk about the problems, we talk about the balance scorecard, we talk about the perspective, we talk about the details of each perspective, we talk about the three stakeholders, and we talk about that what needs to be built in a performance management, right? The five factors in terms of inclusion and blah blah blah. But the question is, what are the sins, right? Or I will say the do's and don'ts. So these are the don'ts, but typically they are sins if you do in your performance management. Vanity, fixing standard that are easily achievable, right? I say, okay, I want to have a 1% gain. You can do it in a 1 month, right? That is not a good standard, right? Silos, right? So provincialism, which means that just working for your own area, your own small office, your own set of people, or your own cubicle, that is a bigger problem. Narcissism, measuring from organizational point of view, right? Only my organization. I don't care what is happening around my world. I just talk about my organization. That's where it's happened. Laziness, right? Not giving adequate attention, right? That typical chalta hai attitude, right? Do not validating the data, right? Do not trying to work on fine tuning the model itself. They are the sins which people do in performance management. Pettiness, measuring only a small component, right? So you take the easiest one which is achievable, and you also take the easiest component altogether, right? So that's even a bigger killer. Inanity, right? Not looking at the consequence of matrices on human behavior. Now I always tell you in supply chain that at the end of the day it is the human which get impacted, at the beginning of the chain also, at the end of the chain also. So do not under evaluate the human behavior. Your chain is run by people, right? So always take care of your employees, your teammates, right? All your juniors. Always ensure that you are not losing the human touch in all your evaluations. Frivolity, taking matrices lightly, that's another thing, right? You just say, okay, fine, okay, it's okay. Some parameters are coming, okay, not a big deal. Try to look into the details of it. If there is a parameter, ask for that data, that how this data has been achieved, what needs to be done. So you have to put effort to get a good performance management in your supply chain. So never do these 7 things, right? If you really want to do a good performance management in your supply chain: vanity, silos, narcissism, laziness, pettiness, inanity, and frivolity. They are the deadly 7 sins you should never do. So this ends our topic on performance management, and now we will talk about the last session or the last topic, which is SCM and road transport, the India context, and the impact of GST. Now, understand that GST is still evolving. This information which I am sharing with you is as of now, but things will change. I hope all for the betterment. So SCM success is directly proportional to availability of better infrastructure. And understand, this is not something where you are heavily involved with your exams, but you need to understand this because you all are working in the Indian economy. Try to understand that how this happens in our India context. So infrastructure is a big deal in supply chain management, and in the World Bank 2007 estimates, and they have a index known as Logistics Performance Index (LPI). India is at 39 in 150 countries. So we are definitely good, right? We are not one of the best, but yeah, 39 in 150 countries, we are doing good in our supply chain management. Mode of transports we use: rail, roads, waterways, air. Now the last two, and especially the third one, waterways, we hardly use. Right? We have a big channels on river, completely underutilized waterways. The cheapest, most economical way, hardly use it. Rails heavily used, roads very heavily used, air very expensive, so not used until unless it is urgent or you want to pay premium out of it. So, what is the logistic cost, right? So, logistic cost is compromise of transportation. It talks about the cost involved in warehousing. It talks about the cost in inventory, and it talks about the cost involved in processing, documentation, and everything. So, that's typically compromise of 100% of logistic cost. Now, as per the recent data, 40% of your logistic cost is transport, which is a huge cost. So we do not have much into warehousing, we do not have much into the inventory, neither in the processing, but the moment we talk about transportation, we consume 40% of our cost of logistics into transports. As part of GDP, India is 14% and China is 21%. So anyway, China is a from the area and the population perspective, China is quite high from the GDP perspective also. But then look, India is at 14%, USA is at 8%. A very efficient, sleek transport management. And now, when we talk about transport costs, it's not only about point A to point B. Talk about your maintenance. You talk about your drivers. You talk about the fuel costs. It talks about the breakdown. It talk about the repairs, insurance. Everything comes into that part of it. So India is quite expensive from that perspective. Like 14% of GDP. That's a very big talk. Very big, huge amount we are talking about. So the question is that from the logistic performance index, from the India context, what we have: efficiency of clearing process 2.69, logistic cost infrastructure 2.90, pretty bad one. Affordability of arranging international shipments 3.08, competency of domestic logistic industry fairly better 3.27, ability to track and trace shipment 3.03, and domestic logistic cost 3.08, and timeliness in reaching destination 3.47. So nothing, nothing great over here, but yeah, all towards 2.5 and 3.5, somewhere in between. Everything comes in more skewed towards a parameter of 3, uh, which is not great. I will say it is just kind of an average thing, and that's where you are here. Now, if you talk about the other countries, they are better. Developed economies are far better. When we talk about the logistic part, if you talk about Singapore, they are typically leaders over here because they have a super efficient way of doing the supply chain management. So let's talk about the scores. So customs 2.69, India at rank 47. Overall, Asia is 2.06, low income country 2.2, world is 2.56. So we are good in our customs. Infrastructure 2.90, world is 2.58. International shipments, right? India is 3, South Asia 2.28, right? Logistic competency, right? 3.27. Tracking and tracing 3.02, domestic logistic cost 3.08, timeliness 3.47, overall LPI 3.07. Now understand one thing: when we talk about the this region, right? These are typically for our region. India is a very flourishing and a big country, so data looks good, but we can definitely go well above over here. So when we talk about South Asia, we have Indonesia, Java, Sumatra, all these small countries where infrastructure, Malaysia, Thailand, where infrastructure is even worse than what we are having as of now, right? So from that perspective, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, so they have their own set of challenges. Now, Singapore, number one rank, right? Hong Kong, number eight. Now these are like Asian countries in 2007. So look, Singapore is one. Their entire economy is dependent on supply chain management, which gives them the highest per capita income in the world. That's Singapore. Uh, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Malaysia, China is 30, Thailand 31, India 39, right? Indonesia, now Vietnam, Philippines, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Myanmar, right? So all those things are even worse than where we out. But then look at China, right? They are at number 30, and they are very aggressive for their rail transport. They are very aggressive for their road transport. They are having this, one region, one road stuff. They call it the new Silk Route. So very heavily investing on the infrastructure because they know that that's where the money lies as of now. Challenges for us: why we are not there? High fuel cost today in the world, the kind of crude we import, India has the highest fuel cost, not because it is expensive, because we have a huge tax regime sitting on diesel and gas. Low load bearing capacity of roads. So, look at our roads, right? So if a heavy truck start going out, the roads start going to shambles. Lengthy and cumbersome documentation, right? So look at the amount of documentation the truck needs to have, right, at every place. Now, before GST, you have to have a state to state kind of a stuff. Problem. High public holidays, right? So if you look to developed countries, they don't have holidays. India, like America, Singapore, they don't have much public holidays. And the beauty is that they put their holidays over a weekend. So either holiday is either a Friday or a Monday, so that people can enjoy a long weekend. But they do not have a disruptive public holidays or the strike culture going in. Deadheading, right? So anybody knows what is deadheading? Just want to know, somebody from the chat can type if they understand what is deadheading. Deadheading means that, if your truck is moving without a load, right, that is deadheading. So if I reach from destination A to B with full load, and if I'm turning from B to C without any load, that is deadheading. That is pure loss. You are running your truck without earning a single penny out of it. Intermodal operations, right? That's again a big challenge over here. Inadequate skills, right? Drivers not educated, health issues, drinking habits. You do not have a driver which can buddy with another driver. There is no specific team of drivers which work around. Low level of technology, right? Poor technology scenarios, whether it's our machines or the way we operate, right? In the logistic companies, poor technology, right? Age old systems, something running on, Visual Basics, or Fox Pro kind of a technology. Nobody uses that anymore. Trucks, poorly maintained trucks, no new technology in the trucks in terms of power steering, good cabin conditions, high fuel efficiencies, no, nothing. Poor maintenance of equipment, right? The Jugaad word, right? So we all feel proud of Jugaad, but Jugaad is the one word which has hampered India and its technology at the root. So get away of Jugaad, get away of Chalta Hai topic if you really want to do great in supply chain. Love your equipments, manage them well, replace them as and when required. Overloading, right? So if truck says I have a capacity of 100 kgs, I just want to overload by another 20 or 30 kgs to ensure that I can make more money, but that kills your engine, right? That hampers your truck. At the long term, you actually start losing money in maintenance and multiple breakdowns. Tough conditions of vehicle operators, right? So I know, you have trucks, you do not have AC cabins, right? Or you people pluck out air conditions from over there just to save some fuel cost. That's very poor condition for truck drivers who have to drive your trucks for kilometers. Poor cabins, no good food, not good salaries, poor education, long destinations to cover. So these are the current challenges. Now, from the GST perspective, what is there? So GST is not something which is a new concept. It is applied in a lot of the countries. Goods and service tax is an indirect tax, and it's levied on manufacture, sale, consumption of goods and services in India, in the India context altogether. And it says that, instead of collecting taxes, at multiple places, let me do it at one single place. GST collected during the purchase or sales of good is independent of the state where the purchase or sales take place. Now, forget about India. Even in US, every state has a different tax. Anybody can go to google.com, try to search US taxes in different states. The wiki page will open and it will say that every state has its own taxation over there. And what actually happens that people who are staying towards the border, they actually go into a different state, buy the stuff from there, and then enjoy it into their state altogether because it is expensive in their own state. So US does not have GST, right? So GST is something where you have a uniform tax across the state throughout the country, one tax. Or the GST bill or the constitution, for your information, this is the 122nd amendment to our constitution, known as the constitution bill or the GST bill. Now, the best way of GST is Australia, 10%. So in Australia, if you buy anything and everything, that is cost at 10%. And the good thing with this is that, if you are a tourist and you're coming back, you can reclaim your GST, right? So you can actually take the GST back at the airport. But flat everything is 10%. It's not the income tax, it's just the indirect taxes we are talking about. Canada, 5% on everything, flat charges, no matter which province you're staying. New Zealand, no matter which council you are, 15% straight. Singapore, 7%. Malaysia, 6%. Sweden, 25%, pretty high, right? India, 27%. But again, we do not have a true GST, right? We have bands within 27%. So at the end of the day, it's again a very different way that India behaves in terms of GST. Now, what is the impact of GST? So let us consider the example of a manufacturing company in Chennai, which moves its goods to New Delhi, right? So the actual sale happens in New Delhi because the store is in New Delhi, and the finished good has to be transported from Chennai to New Delhi across different states, right? From Chennai to New Delhi, you have to cross multiple states. Now, as per the current taxation norms, right? And when we say as per the current, it is before GST, right, or pre-GST era. One has to pay central sales tax, CST, when moving a good to another state and selling it to another state. However, if the good is moved for stocking and not for sale, then CST needs not to be paid. Now look how the tax, makes the thing expensive. From Chennai, if I want to sell something to New Delhi, and if I say I'm selling it directly in New Delhi, I have to pay CST. But if I say no, I am not selling in New Delhi, I am just stocking the stuff in New Delhi, I don't have to pay CST, which means that company will start having warehouses in every other state wherever they have a business, just to evade CST. Now, just to evade CST is one part. The cost of setting up the warehouse and managing that is another problem. So you have a huge number of warehouses, all underutilized, just to save the documentation and other stuff for the CST, the taxation regime of it. Right? With the GST, I don't have to work on that. I know I can directly sell, no matter whether I sell it in Chennai or I sell it into Delhi or I sell it anywhere in the country. I have the same tax to be paid to the government of India, which is a good thing, which helps you to formulate a much more efficient network model. It helps you to manage a better transport system for for your logistics movement. As of now, it has been, I was reading an article which says that today the truck industry has been efficient by at least 35 to 40% after implementing GST, because they get rid of this octroi and the various checkposts where they have to wait for hours and hours, sometimes days over there. So with all that removal, they are claiming that the efficiency of trucks has been increased by 35 to 40%. So when we say central taxes, when we talk about GST, what has actually happened? So we have central taxes, excise duty, which is at the manufacturing, service tax, which the service provider provides, CVD, CST, various types of cess, Kisan cess, Swachh Bharat cess, God knows how many cess, and then additional custom duty if it is like international transports. All those things has been clubbed into one thing, which is GST. Then you have a lot of state tax, VAT. Every state has a different VAT. State excise, right? On central excise, you have another state excise. Luxury tax. Every city has a different luxury tax. Entertainment tax, right? Movies are costly in Delhi, cheaper in Bihar. Entry tax, right? So every time you enter, you have to pay a toll, right? Especially for the transport companies, what you call as octroi, chungi, right? All those things have been demolished, covered into one single tax, GST. It reduces your documentation. It simplifies your network modeling. It helps to have a smoother movement of the trucks via road. It helps to gain efficiency in your road transports. So, benefits enjoyed by the companies who are into GST now: interstate sourcing of raw materials. I can procure material directly from mining areas, right? Bhilai, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, for very simple reason, right? I really don't have to have a stocking warehouse. Direct procurement, taxes remains the same no matter where. Price negotiation, right? So every tax have no more different taxes, right? So price, you can negotiate the price because you know the taxes remain uniform. The same thing goes to the price, fixing price problem. Improvement in quality. If I have multiple vendors to choose, the quality competition goes hotter. I have better quality in place. Better forecasting, right? Why? Because I have more data to work with. I have more vendors to work with. I have more demand to cater. Improved inventory management. Why? How? Less number of warehouses. The same warehouse now can service to multiple states. I can consolidate my warehouse, simplifying my network model for a better efficiency and effectiveness. Better trade-off between cost and customer service, right? So logistics gets simple: on-time delivery, faster delivery, high level of service, right? Sourcing of parts from different warehouses, right? If I don't have something to stock, because I can simply get it procured from a nearby state. Capacity expansion, very important. I can operate pan India, so I can expand my capacity because I have a better demand to cater to. Get greater flexibility in manufacturing, of course, because I am not constrained by certain states where certain things are cheaper. I can have a portfolio of manufacturing. Every state can manufacture because the tax regimes are almost same now. So GST in a term is a very good step for the business. We just need to work on the convergence of GST and to ensure that we are taking benefits of this in supply chain management or in our day-to-day business. Warehousing and supply chain re-engineering, right? Automation, that's what we talked about. Transportation, primary versus secondary transportation, right? 3L providers, right? Consolidation starts happening. So third party logistics providers, the consolidation is happening. My truck can move from one state to another state, right? I really don't have to worry about taxes. 3PL providers, the consolidations happens in the market. Skill set upgradation, very important. Now you have people who are working across the states, different manufacturing portfolio. We are talking about expanding the customer base. You have to upgrade your skills. Service level has to be upgraded. Faster delivery, on time delivery, good services are required now. What are the cons of GST? Fuel price. Unfortunately, the fuel, the petrol and diesel on which the entire transport work has been kept out of GST because they earn the highest amount of revenue for the government of India at the state level as well as the central level. Now, as the GST comes into our sorry, if the fuel comes under GST portfolio, the prices will be reduced by a huge amount, which will increase the efficiency of your supply chain management. The price will further fall down. So when people say that with the GST the price has not come down, yes, they will not come down because the fuel price, the major 40% of your logistic cost, which is a transportation, has not come down. It is increasing, rather fluctuating on daily basis. So you are hedging those costs over there, saying that if I am my fuel is today 80 rupees, it may be 81 or 82 rupees by the time it reaches the destination. So the cost is not coming down for this one very reason, because of the fuel not coming under GST. Consolidation due to GST changes can impact the road transportation sector in many aspects, right? Quicker turnaround time for trucks due to reduced paperwork. We discussed this, right? Lower waiting times at checkposts. Practically, there are no more checkposts over there. So the productivity of assets are higher. As of now, people are claiming 35% to 40%. Higher containerization of cargo that could lead to higher efficiency of loading and unloading. So now I can have one container who can start dropping at multiple places, bigger containers all packed up with products over there. I don't have to worry uh, of uh, of paperwork or a huge amount of paperwork. Pilferage and damage during transit would be an added benefit, right? So I don't have to open it again and again. I don't have to, put my container from one truck to another truck or all the things which transport managers do. I have to be. I will not be doing that with GST. In short to medium term, post GST implementation, the demand of large tractor trailers and higher powered commercial vehicles could increase. Why? Because free movement of goods across states, right? So I can send more items. I can plan a staggered delivery at multiple places, or I can load more items during my in transit period, right? For the last mile connectivity, so you need to have bigger trailers, efficient trailers. In real terms, polarization of truck market into extreme ends of the power spectrum, both upper and bottom end, can be expected. The growth of medium duty trucks could flatter during this period of change. So that's the think tank coming from the gurus of this area. Now with India, the other problem is that you have only two major players, Tata and Ashok Leyland, who are into this heavy truck manufacturing. Now Mahindra also pitching it, so they have already polarized this market. Right, there is not much options in the truck industry. Now with this, there is a further uh, you know extremity which will happen in terms of polarization of the market toward what kind of trucks uh, will be moving across. Development of new micro markets fructifies and future warehouses location strategy reflects upon the current scenario. Medium duty trucks and lower end power of the heavy duty range trucks could grow significantly. So these are the typical market scenarios where people are into this business, and they are forecasting based on what will happen in GST in terms of the truck market. Direct now, why truck market I am talking about? Because we do not have a major airfare, and we don't use waterways much until it's international shipment, and railways have their own model, right? So that's a topic which is a subject in itself. Higher load carrying vehicles means that a fewer number of vehicles are required. Now understand, if I have a bigger truck which can have a capacity of two trucks, I have a reduced fleet. So I have a more efficient fleet and a more effective fleet going in with GST. With driver shortages hitting the industry hard, an unlikely benefit could less pressure to increase the talent pool of truck drivers. Now that's an estimate which the paper says, the documentation, the industry watcher says. Yes, India is having a shortage of truck drivers, healthy and good truck drivers, educated truck drivers, because this has been seen at a very lowly paid, stressful life for truck drivers, and largely because the kind of trucks we have in India, and the way truck drivers are conducting themselves, and the way the logistic company have conducted themselves over the last 2 and 3 decades. Today we are having trucks like Prima, which are beautiful trucks, have very comfortable cabin, and even today when people are hiring truck drivers, they seem to be educated, at least for few companies, not all, but yes, few companies are now looking for a bare minimum qualification of truck drivers, and their health part of it. So this is your typical impact of GST. This is still evolving, students, and I hope that going forward, we will be able to see a better infrastructure for road transport, better trucking deals coming and going in India, and we will be able to go with trucks across our borders, right? They still go, but maybe more than what we are sending now. Maybe to Nepal, China, Burma. We cave in into all those places based on our logistics. So this ends your supply chain management course, and I hope you have liked the supply chain management course. The idea of this course is to give you some idea what happens in supply chain management, and to make you understand that this is a very important topic. Um, we cannot cover everything in these 3 sessions, but the idea is that to have the basics of it, so that when you go into your industry and if you start working on this, you know where to look, what to look, and how to look into these topics, and to draw a good uh, business case for yourself with among your peers, your superiors, and your juniors. I wish you all the best for your exams, and definitely have a very great Diwali festival and holidays over there. Uh, you are you are more than welcome to share your views on the course. If you want to have any discussions, please do post it, and I would like to respond to them. Uh, have a great day and a great life ahead. Thank you, and bye bye.